is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, we begin in Moscow. The Kremlin says it was blindsided by new U.S. sanctions on major Russian oil firms, announced just days after President Putin and Trump held talks in Alaska. Moscow claims the move violates the spirit of their recent summit. Nuclear warning in Beijing. China is urging Washington and Moscow to resume strategic stability talks after the expiration of the New START treaty. The lapse leaves the world's two largest nuclear powers without legally binding limits for the first time in decades. Meanwhile, conditional talks in Havana. President Miguel Diaz-Canel says Cuba is open to dialogue with the U.S., but only on equal footing and without pressure. The White House has dismissed the offer, saying the Cuban government is on its last leg amid a deepening energy crisis. Maritime crackdown in the Arabian Gulf. Iran's IRGC Navy has seized two foreign vessels accused of fuel smuggling. Authorities say more than 1 million liters of diesel were confiscated near Farsi Island, signaling an escalation in Tehran's maritime operation. Health spending in the Philippines. President Marcos Jr. has touted a record 549 billion peso health budget. The administration says the funding aims to close care gaps and expand universal health services nationwide. Case advances at the Sandigan Bayan. Prosecutors expect to arrest their case next week in the Nauhan flood control controversy. The court is hearing bail petitions for 9 officials accused of malversation in a 289 million peso project. And finally, an endurance record from Brazil. Athlete Pepe Villa Monsini has set a new Guinness World Record by running for 24 hours straight on a treadmill, covering 188 kilometers in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I'm Troy Gomez, and Newsline World starts now. In the news, Russia says new U.S. sanctions targeting major oil firms caught Moscow off guard, coming immediately after high-level talks between President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Alaska. Juan Montibon reports.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said U.S. sanctions aimed at energy giants Lukoil and Rosneft were unexpected given what he described as constructive discussions in Anchorage. Speaking in an interview released by Russia's foreign ministry, Lavrov said President Vladimir Putin himself was surprised by the move, noting Moscow had anticipated follow-through diplomacy after engaging with Washington's proposals. Instead, Lavrov said sanctions were announced without warning, a step he suggested ran counter to the tone of the bilateral meeting.
И после этого мы ждали, что США подтвердят то, что, ну да, вот теперь, поскольку вы согласны с нашим предложением, давайте что-то объявлять. Конференцию созывать, подписывать чего-нибудь, там, Совет мира. Но произошло вдруг санкции против Лукойла и Роснефти. Более того, сейчас одновременно, вы знаете, вводятся тарифы против тех стран, которые покупают энергоносители у России.
The talks held at a military base in Anchorage in August 2025 covered the Ukraine conflict as well as prospects for expanding trade and economic cooperation between the two powers. Lavrov also alleged that the sanctions were tied to broader U.S. strategic interest in Europe, claiming Washington wants European allies to remain dependent on American liquefied natural gas and weapons. He argued that restricting Russian energy exports forces Europe to buy costlier alternatives from the United States, framing so-called Russophobia as, in his words, a political price Europeans are being made to pay.
В форматах мы прекрасно понимаем, что Соединенные Штаты при всей их мощи, при всех амбициях, если хотите, вынуждены считаться с мнением администрация вынуждена считаться с мнением целого ряда групп людей в своей внешней, да и во внутренней политике. Во внутреннем плане очень большое количество, демократы прежде всего, но и некоторые республиканцы занимают русофобские позиции. И, конечно, мы можем понять, что администрация не может игнорировать в своих действиях. Она должна, чтобы сохранить лояльность вот этого русофобского крыла, делать какие-то антироссийские шаги. Но существо этих антироссийских шагов, оно весьма и весьма серьезное. Также я могу представить себе, что администрации нужно и Европу каким-то образом ублажать.
Washington announced the sanctions package in October 2025, barring U.S. entities from financial transactions with Rosneft, Lukoil, and their subsidiaries. The U.S. Treasury said the measures were designed to limit Russia's access to the dollar system and disrupt its global energy supply chains, part of broader economic pressure linked to the Ukraine war. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Paul Montibon, SMNI News.
The last major nuclear arms control pact between the United States and Russia has now expired, raising fresh concerns over global strategic stability and the risk of a renewed arms race. Joy Tabanao has the details.
Senior Russian officials say Moscow remains committed to maintaining nuclear balance through diplomacy, even as the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or New START Treaty, lapses without a replacement. As of Thursday morning, no agreement had been reached to extend the treaty, bringing the landmark arms control framework to an abrupt end. Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov said Moscow had proposed a voluntary one-year extension of the treaty's core limits as early as September 2025, but claimed Washington never issued a formal response. On the eve of the expiration, Russia's foreign ministry declared that both countries are now no longer bound by the treaty's obligations or its asymmetrical nuclear restrictions that effectively frees Moscow to determine their military postures independently, including decisions on deployed strategic warheads and delivery systems. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov warned the lapse could make the world a more dangerous place within days, citing the loss of transparency and verification mechanisms that had helped prevent escalation for over a decade. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump downplayed the risk earlier this year, saying that if it expires, and suggested he wanted a better agreement. New START had been the final pillar of U.S.-Russia nuclear arms control after the collapse of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019. Joy Tabanao, your citizen correspondent reporting for Newsline World.
China has urged the United States and Russia to resume dialogue on strategic stability, warning of global risk as a New START nuclear arms treaty approaches expiration. Daniela Paulite has the details.
China reiterated its commitment to a defensive nuclear policy and called for renewed dialogue between the United States and Russia as concerns grow over the impending expiration of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or New START. Speaking at a regular briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said China maintains a policy of no first use of nuclear weapons and has pledged not to use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear states.
中国一直坚持自卫防御的核战略，恪守不首先使用核武器政策，无条件的承诺不对无核武器国家和无核武器区使用或威胁使用核武器。
Lin added that China's nuclear strength is not comparable to that of the United States or Russia, and said Beijing will not take part in nuclear disarmament negotiations for now. China also expressed regret over the looming expiration of the New START, warning of its impact on global strategic stability and the international arms control system.
关于你提到的 美俄新削减战略武器条约失效的问题。我要指出的是，中方对美俄新削减战略武器条约到期失效表示遗憾。条约对维护全球战略稳定具有重要意义。国际社会普遍担心条约的失效将对国际核军控体系和全球的核秩序产生消极影响。
Lin said China hopes Washington will respond positively to Russia's proposal for both sides to continue observing the treaty's core limits and resume strategic stability talks at an early date. The spokesperson also confirmed that Chinese President Xi Jinping held a virtual meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, during which the two leaders exchanged views on bilateral ties as well as international and regional issues. Separately, Lin criticized the United States' proposal to form a critical minerals trade bloc, warning against exclusive economic groupings.
维护开放、包容、普惠的国际贸易环境，符合各国的共同利益。各方都有责任为维护关键矿产的全球产供链稳定与安全发挥建设性作用。同时，我们反对任何国家以小圈子的规则破坏国际经贸秩序。
China said all countries share responsibility in ensuring the stability and security of global supply chains, particularly in critical minerals. Reporting for Newsline World, Daniela Paulita, SMNI News.
A major Islamist political alliance in Bangladesh has staged a massive campaign rally ahead of key local elections, drawing tens of thousands of supporters in a show of force in the country's northwest. Almar Forzuelo reports.
Crowds packed the grounds of Nawabganj Government College in Chapai, Nawabganj, where organizers say more than 40,000 people gathered under the banner of Jamaat-e-Islami and its 11-party alliance. Supporters waved white flags marked with party symbols as coalition leaders took turns addressing the rally. Party chief Dr. Shafikir Rahman used the event to frame the upcoming Upazila Parishad or Sub-District Council elections as a turning point in Bangladesh's political direction. He told supporters the public had grown weary of decades of governance cycles and was now demanding systemic change, rallying the crowd around calls for justice and political reform.
জুলাই যুদ্ধের সেদিন রাস্তায় নেমে বলেছিল we want justice আমরা সর্বক্ষেত্রে ন্যায় বিচার চাই তার মানে হলো ন্যায় বিচার নাই সেই ন্যায় বিচার আমরা প্রতিষ্ঠা করতে চাই ইনশাআল্লাহ
The choice of Chapai Nawabganj was strategic. The district is considered a Jamaat stronghold and sits near the Indian border, with several high-profile candidates from both Jamaat-e-Islami and Bangladesh Nationalist Party contesting key local seats. Supporters at the rally echoed broader opposition grievances. They are calling for good governance, political space for dissent, and an end to what they describe as years of repression against rival parties.
আমরা চাই একটি মানবিক বাংলাদেশ, আমরা চাই একটি চাঁদাবাজ মুক্ত বাংলাদেশ, আমরা চাই সন্ত্রাসবাদ মুক্ত বাংলাদেশ এবং আমরা চাই শান্তি এবং সুশাসনের বাংলাদেশ। গত 17 বছর আমরা যে জুলুম এবং নির্যাতন বিরোধী পক্ষের উপর দেখেছিলাম, আমরা এই বাংলাদেশ আজ চাই না। এখানে সরকার দল যেই যাক, বিরোধী দল যেই যাক, আমাদের একটা সহাবস্থান দরকার, যেন আমরা সবাই নিজ নিজ আদর্শিক রাজনীতি করতে পারি।
তাহলে একটা মানবিক বাংলাদেশ হবে, যেখানে ফাঁসিবাদ থাকবে না, যেখানে বৈষম্য থাকবে না, যেখানে মানবিক হচ্ছে সব জায়গাতে থাকবে, এমন একটি সরকার গঠন হবে। এক্ষেত্রে হচ্ছে কয়েকটা বিষয়কে খুবই জুলাইয়ের আকাঙ্ক্ষাকে বাস্তবায়ন করা হবে এবং 54টি বছর যে নারীরা তাদের অধিকার পায়নি, এই নারীদের অধিকারকে নিশ্চিত করা হবে আর সর্বস্তরে নারী পুরুষ সবার কর্মসংস্থানের একটা নিরাপত্তা নিশ্চিত করা হবে।
The massive turnout signals an attempt by Islamist and right-leaning factions to consolidate support and present a united front as Bangladesh heads into another critical electoral contest. Reporter for Newsline World, Almar Forzuelo, SMNI News.
Up next, health spending in the Philippines. President Marcos Jr. has touted a record 549 billion peso health budget. The administration says the funding aims to close care gaps and expand universal health services nationwide. And case advances at the Sandigan Bayan. Prosecutors expected to rest their case next week in the Nauan flood control controversy. The court is hearing bail petitions for 9 officials accused of malversation in a 289 million peso project. More news when Newsline World returns.
Sa kabila ng mga mas modernong kaalaman at teknolohiya, nananatiling matindi ang banta ng HIV sa Pilipinas. Pero gaano nga ba kalala ang sitwasyon? Ang HIV o Human Immunodeficiency Virus ay isang sakit na sumisira sa immune system ng katawan. Ngunit tandaan, hindi ito nakukuha sa simpleng pakikisalamuha. Hindi mo agad mararamdaman, pero unti-unti nitong pinapahina ang katawan. At kapag hindi naagapan, humahantong ito sa AIDS, ang huling yugto na impeksyon, kung saan halos wala ng panlaban ng katawan laban sa sakit. Patuloy na dumadami ang kaso ng sakit na ito sa Pilipinas. Isang nakababahalang pagtaas. Umabot na sa 500% ang itinaas ng HIV cases sa mga kabataang edad 15 hanggang 25. Ayon mismo sa Department of Health, 56 na bagong kaso ang naitatala kada araw sa bansa mula Enero hanggang Marso 2025. At ang pinakamatinding apektado, ang kalalakihan at kabataang Pilipino. Dahil dito, ang Pilipinas na ngayon ang may pinakamataas na bilang ng bagong kaso ng HIV sa buong Western Pacific region. Isang indikasyon ng lumulubahang sitwasyon. Kaya nananawagan ng Department of Health gawing opisyal at urgent ang laban sa HIV sa pamamagitan ng isang Public Health Emergency Declaration. Kalalakihan ng pangunahing apektado, 95% ng bagong kaso ay lalaki. Mahigit 1/4 ay kabataang nasa edad 15 hanggang 24. Habang wala pang deklarasyon, patuloy ang DOH sa mga sumusunod na hakbang: HIV testing, libreng gamot, self-test kits, at pakikipagtulungan sa DepEd para sa edukasyon sa mga paaralan. Isinulong rin ng DOH ang online patient appointment system para sa HIV patients. Layunin nitong gawing mas madali at mas personal ang pag-access sa libreng gamutan at konsultasyon ayon sa schedule ng pasyente. Ang HIV ay hindi tulad ng flu. Hindi ito basta naipapasa sa hangin. Ito ay naipapasa sa pamamagitan ng personal na desisyon. Kailangan din nating pagtuunan ng pansin ang ugali, disiplina, at personal na responsibilidad. Isang paalala mula sa SMNI.
We're back with more news. The prosecution aims to finish presenting evidence and witnesses next week against the accused in the Nauan flood control anomaly in Oriental Mindoro. This follows the ongoing bail hearing at the Sandigan Bayan 6th Division regarding the malversation case. Sheena Torno has the news.
During Thursday's bail hearing, Commission on Audit Auditor Victoriano Costa took the stand as a prosecution witness regarding the allegedly substandard flood control project in Nauhan, Oriental Mindoro. The hearing involves the co-accused of former Ako Bicol Party List Congressman Zaldico in a malversation case. The cross-examination did not begin immediately due to a series of objections from the defense team. The defense protested because they had not yet received the complete set of exhibits, while Acosta was on the witness stand. Furthermore, they claimed that the copies of Acosta's judicial affidavit were sent only in a piecemeal installments. The prosecution admitted there were indeed errors in the scanning and transmission of documents to the defense. However, they argued that the defense should not make it a big deal since only about 50 pages were missing from the initial delivery. Consequently, Sandigan Bayan 6th Division Chairperson Justice Sara Fernandez expressed dismay over the prosecution's failure to provide all exhibits and attachment to Acosta's judicial affidavit within the prescribed time. Due to this, Justice Fernandez fined the prosecution 1,000 pesos for the late submission of the attachments. The defense also moved to strike out Acosta's judicial affidavit because of the prosecution's actions, claiming it violates the accused's rights to properly respond to the allegations against them. Under judicial affidavit rule, copies must be provided to the defense at least 5 days prior to the hearing. However, Justice Fernandez denied the motion to expunge and allowed the presentation of Acosta's judicial affidavit to proceed. The prosecution plans to file a motion for reconsideration regarding the fine. Meanwhile, the prosecution aims to wrap up the presentation of evidence and witnesses by next week. Officials from the Land Bank of the Philippines, Legazpi, and the DPWH Regional Office are expected to testify. It can be recalled that among those who previously testified for the prosecution regarding the flood control scandal were DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon, Oriental Mindoro Governor Bons Dolor, and DPWH Mimaropa OIC Regional Director Edita Babaran. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Sheena Torno, SMNI News.
A teacher from Las Piñas is asking the Supreme Court to stop the Manila Ordinance that increases the garbage collection fee for businesses. The petition includes a request for a temporary restraining order and a refund for those who have already paid. Margot Gonzalez reports.
A high school teacher has frequently filed petitions on various issues, and the Supreme Court has personally gone to the highest court again, this time questioning the higher garbage fee in Manila under Manila City Ordinance number 9151. In his latest petition, Barry Tayam is asking the SC to issue a temporary restraining order against the said ordinance, explaining that it is allegedly illegal and unconstitutional. Moreover, he argued that the sharp increase in garbage collection fees is causing harm to businesses directly impacted by the sudden price hike. It was revealed that the fee has increased by 1,200%, which is 10 times higher for businesses renewing their business permits in Manila. According to Tayam, the local government unit committed grave abuse of discretion by not holding public consultations and failing to follow the mandatory publication requirements for the ordinance. The ordinance also allegedly bypasses the rule of the barangays and waste segregation and collection.
So imagine natin kung yan ay 10,000 na garbage fee yung dating binabayaran, magiging 120,000. So hindi po yun makatarungan. Sobrang laki po. At meron pong obvious na abuse of discretion ang ginawa ng lungsod ng Maynila kasama po ang konseho nito.
The petitioner believes his case will succeed even though he is not a resident of Manila. Some petitions at the Supreme Court are often dismissed if the petitioner is not directly affected by the issues brought before the court. However, Tayam asserts that his concern is valid and should be addressed by the highest court due to its impact on the environment.
Meron din naman pong kinalaman ang usaping garbage fee sa environmental health. Ang legal standing po ay nare-relax pagdating po sa mga environmental issue at pwede po ang legal standing or locus standi ng isang concerned citizen.
Tayam wants not only a TRO but also a refund for businesses that have already paid the increased garbage fee since the 2026 business permit renewal period began. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno previously explained that the fee hike was necessary due to rising costs in garbage collection. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Margot Gonzalez, SMNI News.
In an event in the city of Manila on Friday, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has highlighted the record 549 billion peso health budget to address healthcare gaps. President Catarong reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has pledged to strengthen the country's healthcare system by addressing shortages in facilities, equipment, and medical personnel, particularly in underserved areas. Speaking at the groundbreaking ceremony of the pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila College of Allied Health Sciences building on Friday, the President said the government has allocated at least 500 billion pesos in the current national budget to improve the effectiveness of the health sector.
Sa pagtatayo ng College of Allied Health Science Building, mabibigyan ng pagkakataon ang nakakabatang henerasyon na aralin ang mga kursong pang-medisina. Sila po ang mga susunod na haligi ng ating sektor ng pangkalusugan.
Marcos Jr. acknowledged persistent challenges faced by Filipinos, including limited access to medical services, lack of modern hospital facilities and technology, and shortages of healthcare centers and workers. He emphasized that the government will no longer allow Filipinos to suffer due to the lack of funds for medical treatment or force families in the provinces to travel long distances just to access hospital care. For this year's budget, more than 427 billion pesos has allocated to the Department of Health and the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth, while over 13 billion pesos has been set aside for specialty hospitals. Nearly 9 billion pesos will go to hospitals under the Department of National Defense and the Philippine National Police, and almost 98 billion pesos to local government health programs. The government has also allotted more than 1 billion pesos for medical scholarships and tuition subsidies for students in the state universities and colleges. In addition, nearly 1.4 billion pesos has been allocated for medical assistance and the implementation of zero-balance billing at the Philippine General Hospital. President Marcos said these investments are expected to improve medical services and further strengthen the country's healthcare system, urging the public to take full advantage of government health programs. During the event, President Marcos also turned over 15 million pesos in assistance to Baseco Hospital to enhance its facilities and services. He later visited the Hospital ng Maynila Medical Center, noting that it recorded the highest number of first-time patient consultations under PhilHealth's Yaman ng Kalusugan program last September.
Sa puntong ito, nananawagan ako sa ating mga kababayan. Samantalahin ninyo ang mga programang ito upang mapangalagaan ang inyong mga sarili. Bukas po ang mga serbisyong ito para sa lahat, lalo na sa higit na nangangailangan.
Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Casiling Catarong, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, Chantal Anicoche a Filipino-American who claims to be an activist, revealed to soldiers that groups brought her to the Philippines and influenced her to join the communist terrorist group New People's Army or NPA. The Philippine Army said Chantal voluntarily went with government troops to receive medical treatment and shared information on how illegal recruiters and left-leaning groups operate, contrary to the NPA's claim that she was detained and tortured. Almar Forzuelo will give us more details.
There's no reason for us to keep her kasi hindi naman natin siya dinitain in the first place.
This was clarified by the 2nd Infantry Division of the Philippine Army in an exclusive interview with SMNI News regarding accusations being hurled by the communist terrorist group CPP, NPA, NDF against government troops. Left-leaning groups have been calling for the release of Chantal Anicoche, the Filipino-American who was rescued by soldiers near the site of an encounter between NPA rebels and government forces in Abra de Ilog, Occidental Mindoro last month. According to Colonel Michael Aquino, spokesperson of the 2nd Infantry Division, Chantal voluntarily accompanied military troops to receive treatment at a military hospital, contrary to claims by communist groups that she was allegedly hidden, detained, and tortured.
Una-una, this is a victory of the Filipino people. It's a victory of peace and freedom. It's a victory of truth. Nakita natin. Kasi ang sabi nila is release Chantal. Una-una, there's nothing to release. Kasi hindi naman natin siya dinitain. Balikan natin si Chantal ay nag-volunteer siya dito sa ating hospital para magpagaling. Nag-sign siya. Kasi we need that also. Ng isang manifest of undertaking, signifying her intention na gusto kong magpagamot dito sa hospital. So, nabigyan siya ng gamot, proper care. Even the psychosocial processing na kailangang ibigay sa kanya, binigay din natin.
Colonel Aquino emphasized the goodwill shown to an individual critical of the Philippine government due to the misguided ideology was not propaganda. In fact, Chantal also showed good behavior toward the soldiers. Her parents were reportedly grateful for the care and attention given to their daughter.
Maganda ang pinakita niya dito sa atin and we commend that. Even the family. In fact, nagbigyan nga ng letter yung nanay na pinablish natin. Nag-request tayo ng permission. Sabi nila propaganda. Hindi siya propaganda. It's the truth. Na kailangang sabihin. Para walang masabi itong kabilang grupo na patuloy na nanggagamit, na dinadala yung ating mga anak sa karahasan.
Sa ilang araw na pamamalagi ni Chantal Anicoche dito sa loob ng kampo ng Second ID, ibinahagi nito sa mga sundalo ang ilang mga impormasyon na nagkokonekta sa mga illegal recruiter at kung papaano nga ba gumagana ang operasyon ng mga makakaliwang grupo. Mga impormasyon na nagpapatunay sa mga maling gawain ng CPP, NPA, NDF.
Meron siyang mga nasabi. Meron siyang mga naikwento. Hindi naman natin siya finorce para magkwento. Pero in the process of interaction, may mga nasabi siya. Una-una meron siyang, dineclare niya yung kanyang notebook na andun nakasulat yung mga ginawa nila doon, no? At napagalaman natin na yung mga tao at organization na nagdala sa kanya dito, no? Siya ay membro ng migrante at pagdating niya dito, hinan-over siya sa karapatan, no? So, diyan ang istorya natin. Ang karapatan, sila ang nagdala sa Mindoro sa kanya. Hindi lang siya. Andyan si Stephanie Burinaga na yung kanyang nanay ay nagpa-interview. Andyan din yung nanay ni Jerlyn. No? At sila ang nagsabi. Kasi may mga pictures na pinakita sila na andun. No? Andun. Kaya andun si Representative Reneco kasi doon sa picture, magkakasama sila doon.
Colonel Aquino added that if there was anything positive that came out of the incident, it was seen by millions of Filipinos how the Philippine Army values and protects the life of every Filipino, contrary to the claims of the CPP, NPA, NDF.
The reason why yung mga netizens natin, yung Filipinos natin, nakasubaybay ng case ni Chantal, nakita nila kung paano inalagaan siya ng Philippine Army. Pagpapatunay na ang Army natin ay naniniwala sa international maritime law at human rights. Okay? Lahat ng pinablish natin ay makatotohanan. As compared sa mga pinalabas ng kabilang grupo. Ano ang pinalabas nila? Tinorture natin si Chantal, na nasa custody siya, na illegal detention siya. No. So, the Army is an organization whose work is anchored on truth, and you can never defeat the truth.
He further said the communist forces in the Philippines are weakening, which is why they are pushing their narratives abroad to recruit more members.
Gusto nating sabihin sa kanila ngayon na ang nangyayari dito sa Pilipinas, natatalo na sila. Natatalo sila sa naratibo dito ngayon. So anong estratehiya nila? They go abroad. At doon sila nagkukwento ng kanilang dating kwento na hindi na tinanggap ng Pilipino. Yung mga parents, mga Filipino parents doon sa abroad, ay hindi nila yan alam. So, again, sa mga magulang na nasa abroad, check natin kung sino yung mga kasama ng ating mga anak, especially dun sa schools, kung sinong organization ang sinasama ng inyong mga anak. Andyan na sila. Kung sino yung mga naingay na organization, sila na yun. Sino ba yung mga organization na maingay? Si Bayan USA, si Migrante International, si Karapatan.
For God and beloved Philippines, Almar Forsualo, SMNI News.
When we return, conditional talks in Havana. President Miguel Diaz-Canel says Cuba is open to dialogue with the U.S., but only on equal footing and without pressure. The White House has dismissed the offer, saying the Cuban government is on its last leg amid a deepening energy crisis. And maritime crackdown in the Arabian Gulf. Iran's IRGC Navy has seized 2 foreign vessels accused of fuel smuggling. Authorities say more than 1 million liters of diesel were confiscated near Farsi Island, signaling an escalation in Tehran's maritime operations. More news after the break.
Ikaw ba ay namomroblema sa taas ng electric bill buwan-buwan? Huwag mag-alala, narito ang ilang paraan upang makatipid sa kuryente. Patayin ang mga ilaw at appliances kapag hindi ginagamit. Sa halip ay gumamit ng natural na liwanag upang makatipid sa kuryente. Tanggalin sa saksakan ang mga appliances kung hindi ginagamit. Iwasan ang paggamit ng maraming appliances ng sabay-sabay. Gumamit ng LED bulbs. Ito ay mas tipid sa kuryente kumpara sa mga incandescent at fluorescent bulbs. Regular na linisin ang mga appliances tulad ng electric fan, aircon vents at refrigerator. Magkaroon ng takdang araw sa isang linggo sa pamamalansya at paglalaba. Gumamit ng energy-efficient appliances. Tandaan, maging wais sa paggamit ng kuryente upang makatipid para mas gumaan ang buhay. Ang paalalang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng SMNI.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy has seized 2 foreign vessels accused of operating an organized fuel smuggling network in the Arabian Gulf, marking a significant escalation in Iran's maritime surveillance operations amid heightened regional tensions. Faith Agustin has the news.
In the strategic waters of the Arabian Gulf, the IRGC Navy has executed a high-stakes intelligence operation against what it describes as an organized smuggling network. Commander Haydar Honarian Mujarrad announced that the 2nd Naval Region intercepted 2 vessels near the Iranian border. Following a judicial order, the ships were escorted to the port of Bushehr. Authorities recovered more than 1 million liters of smuggled diesel, which has since been handed over to the National Oil Refining and Distribution Company.
با توجه به اشراف کامل نیروی دریایی سکوبر خلیج فارس منطقه دوم نیروی دریایی رصد اشرافی که داشت متوجه تردد 2 فروند شناور حامل قاچاق سوخت شد. با حکم قضایی این 2 شناور تقریبا در محدوده استفاده جزیره اقتدار جزیره فارسی.
The crackdown resulted in the arrest of 15 foreign crew members who are currently in custody awaiting legal proceedings. While the nationalities of the crew have not been officially disclosed, local media reports that the vessels had been under surveillance for several months. The operation underscores Iran's resolve to maintain strict control over its maritime borders, even as the United States continues to amass a massive naval presence just outside its territorial waters. This latest seizure adds to a growing list of maritime incidents in the region. With President Trump's recent deployment of the biggest and the best warships to the Gulf, any seizure of foreign vessels by the RIGC is being closely monitored by international observers for signs of potential escalation between Tehran and Washington. As the 15 crew members face the Iranian court system, the IRGC has signaled that its surveillance and intelligence operations will remain in high gear. The message from Tehran is clear. Despite the looming presence of U.S. carriers, the Revolutionary Guard remains the primary authority over the transit of energy within its claimed waters. This has been Faith Agustin, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has declared that Havana is ready to engage in dialogue with the United States, but only on equal footing and without the weight of diplomatic pressure. The White House, however, brushed off the statements claiming the Cuban government is on its last leg. More on this from Jane Cudnita.
In Havana, a defiant but measured President Miguel Diaz-Canel addressed the international press. As Cuba faces its most severe fuel crisis in decades, the president offered a rare olive branch to Washington, stating that Cuba remains open to discussing any topic provided the U.S. respects its sovereignty. But he was quick to clarify that a pact for life cannot be built while the U.S. holds an economic gun to Cuba's head.
Cuba está dispuesta a un diálogo con los Estados Unidos, a un diálogo sobre cualquiera de los temas que se quiera debatir o dialogar. ¿Con qué condiciones? Sin presiones, bajo presiones no se puede dialogar. Sin precondicionamiento, en una posición de iguales, en una posición de respeto a nuestra soberanía, a nuestra independencia, a nuestra autodeterminación.
The timing of the offer is critical. Following the U.S. military operation in Venezuela last month, Cuba has lost its primary source of subsidized oil. President Donald Trump's recent executive order, which imposes tariffs on any nation supplying oil to the island, has effectively paralyzed public transport and hospitals. Diaz-Canel labeled this a war that is political and ideological, aimed at crushing multilateralism through hegemonic thinking.
El gobierno de los Estados Unidos manipulando a través de la amenaza de los aranceles a los países que suministran petróleo es prácticamente con ese pretexto lo que lo ha convertido en un bloqueo energético a nuestro país.
Facing total energy collapse, Havana is leaning on its few remaining allies. Diaz-Canel revealed that a virtual summit between Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping on Wednesday resulted in a joint pledge to continue collaboration and cooperation with both Venezuela and Cuba. Despite this, the president announced he is preparing the nation for a people's war, a defensive plan that includes mobilizing the entire territorial defense system. In Washington, the White House response was cold. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt doubled down on Trump's prediction that the Cuban regime will be failing pretty soon, suggesting that Havana's sudden interest in talks is a sign of desperation rather than a genuine shift in policy.
I think the fact that the Cuban government is on its last leg and its country is about to collapse, they should be wise in their statements directed towards the President of the United States. But as I just reiterated, the President is always willing to engage in diplomacy.
With blackouts rolling across the island and the Council of Ministers updating rationing plans, the standoff in the Caribbean has reached a boiling point. Whether the closeness Trump claims to have with Havana leaders will lead to an actual meeting, or if the energy blockade will trigger a total collapse, remains the defining question of the week. This has been Jane Cogniter, Global Citizen Correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
A daring aerial rescue was launched in Santa Catarina after an injured hiker became trapped in rugged mountain terrain, prompting Mexico's Civil Protection to deploy a helicopter. Mexico Civil Protection authorities conducted an aerial rescue operation to save an injured hiker in the mountainous area of Santa Catarina, Nuevo Leon. According to officials, the hiker sustained injuries while trekking through rugged terrain, making ground rescue difficult. A helicopter was deployed to locate the victim and carry out an airlift amid challenging conditions. The operation shows rescue personnel lowering equipment from the aircraft before securing the injured hiker and transporting them to a safe area. The victim was later transferred to medical responders for further treatment. Authorities praised the coordinated efforts of the rescue team and reminded the public to take necessary precautions when hiking, especially in remote and mountainous areas. Malawi is under a nationwide public health emergency after health authorities detected 2 separate cases of poliovirus. Worried parents flocked to hospitals in Lilongwe on Thursday as health officials confirmed the first positive cases since 2022, sparking an urgent vaccination drive to protect the country's youngest citizens. Prince Tripoli reports.
The walls of Waila Hospital in Lilongwe were crowded with concerned parents this Thursday as news of a polio resurgence spread through the capital. Mothers and caregivers held their infants close while health workers moved quickly to administer vaccines. The Malawian government officially declared the outbreak on February 3 after samples confirmed the presence of circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus type 2. Among the confirmed cases is an 8-year-old girl, a stark reminder that virus remains a threat years after it was thought to be contained.
From our samples, we tested 2 of them tested positive from 2 different places, and then a child, an 8-year-old girl, presented with polio and it was confirmed positive, and so this is an indication that we still have polio around.
Health officials are stressing that because of polio has no cure, prevention is the only line of defense. The Ministry of Health has urged all parents, even those whose children have already been immunized, to participate in a massive emergency vaccination program set to launch next week. The goal is to create a wall of immunity before the virus can spread further into rural districts.
Ndipozilinda bali wandichitipoliyo nimene nimavela ngati kwa makolo ya ndeno kukhudzana ndi katemera amene alubwera sabata mawa ndikukhulupirira kuti Malawi yonse makolo amene ali ndi ana atengerepo mwayi pamene boma lufuna lipereke katemera chifukwa choti katemera wa poliyo amathandiza poliyo ndiyoopsa komanso imazunza.
The 2026 outbreak is the first of its kind in Malawi since the 2022 emergency. While the country had made significant strides in polio eradication, global health experts warn that gaps in routine immunization during recent regional unrest may have allowed the virus to resurface. The upcoming campaign will target all children under the age of 15 to ensure total coverage. As ambulances and health teams prepare for door-to-door sweep next week, the message from Lilongwe is clear. The window to stop the virus is small, and the cost of inaction is a lifetime of paralysis for the nation's children. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Prince Tripoli, SMNA News.
As students in some areas continue to experience a shortage of classrooms, the Department of Education will expedite efforts to catch up on and complete long-delayed classroom projects, particularly in 2026. Angel Pastor reports.
The Department of Education is intensifying measures to complete thousands of unfinished classrooms nationwide, while also preparing more flexible ways of delivering school facilities in 2026. According to DepEd, more than 8,000 classroom projects are currently being implemented for 2024 and 2025. Around 3,600 classrooms have already been completed, while the remaining projects are being closely monitored to ensure their immediate completion and use by students. To address the backlog, the government allocated 2.282 billion pesos under the 2026 budget for the completion of 2,067 classrooms despite funding constraints. DepEd and the Department of Public Works and Highways are also conducting nationwide validation activities in 384 schools to determine the actual status of the projects and accelerate their completion. At the same time, DepEd is preparing more flexible classroom delivery options starting in 2026, including partnerships with local government units and the private sector to address classroom shortage and ensure safe learning spaces for students. For God of my beloved Philippines, Angel Pastor, SMNI News.
Just days after Joaquin Phoenix dropped out, Pedro Pascal has taken over the lead in Todd Haynes' De Noche, saying the indie project or saving the indie project from being stalled. Meanwhile, singer-songwriter Barry Manilow is taking time off after lung cancer surgery, canceling his scheduled Las Vegas performances. Blake Ann has all the buzz.
Pedro Pascal is stepping in to lead the upcoming indie film De Noche after his co-star Joaquin Phoenix dropped out at the last minute. The 50-year-old actor will take on the lead role in acclaimed director Todd Haynes' gay romance, which had been thought to be stalled following Phoenix's departure, Variety reported Wednesday. Phoenix, 51, was originally set to play a hard-boiled detective opposite Danny Ramirez, who remains in the cast as a much younger boarding school teacher and romantic interest. With Pascal now on board, production is expected to move forward on the highly anticipated indie project. American singer-songwriter Barry Manilow has canceled his upcoming Las Vegas performances, but assured fans he is recovering well after surgery to remove lung cancer. The 80-year-old crooner, famous for 1970s hits including Copacabana and Mandy, revealed in December that he had been diagnosed with lung cancer and had planned to undergo surgery. Manilow thanked his fans for their support and said he is focusing on rest and recovery before returning to the stage. And that's all for now. I'm Blake Ann, bringing you the latest showbiz.
And for a sports update, Great Britain Matt Richardson completed a double at the European Championships after winning gold in the men's keirin in Turkey. Meanwhile, a Brazilian endurance athlete has set a new Guinness World Record after running for 24 straight hours on a treadmill in Rio de Janeiro. Here's Carlo de la Peña for the report.
Great Britain's Matt Richardson completed a golden double at the European Track Cycling Championships after winning the men's Keirin on the final day in Turkey. The 26-year-old had already taken the sprint title earlier in the week and produced a strong late surge in the Keirin final to beat Dutch rival Harry Laversen. It was Richardson's first European Championships since switching nationality from Australia to Great Britain in 2024. He said the Keirin win was especially important in showing he belongs at the top level. Teammate Harry Ledingham-Horn finished 6th. In the women's Madison, Katie Archibald and Anna Morris claimed silver for Great Britain, while Belgium's Lotte Kopecky and Sherry Bossut took gold. Great Britain finished the championship's top of the medal table with 13 medals. Meanwhile, Brazilian runner Pepe Fiamoncini completed 188 kilometers more than 4 marathons during a 24-hour treadmill run at an open-air gym on a Panama beach. The 35-year-old took only short breaks to change shoes and use the bathroom. Officials monitored the attempt via live stream, and once confirmed, it will become his 3rd Guinness World Record. Fiamoncini said the challenge was as much mental as physical, describing treadmill running as the most boring test he could imagine. He began pursuing extreme endurance events during the COVID-19 pandemic, first completing an Ironman triathlon, followed by an Ultraman race. In 2023, he broke his first world record by crossing Bolivia's Uyuni Salt Flats, covering 170 kilometers in just over 33 hours. Last October, he set another treadmill record by running 110 kilometers in 12 hours, using it as preparation for the 24-hour feat. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carlo de la Peña bringing you the latest sports news.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the sun. No matter who you are and whatever your circumstances in life, there are always things to be grateful for. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Trey Gomez. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.